I don't think for the general day-to-day work, we could go back to an old way of working. I just don't think it's possible. The limits of each of these agents, their token costs or capacity costs, or how many queries you're allowed to send through to it. And that comes to the whole context engineering and refinement space as well.
This is Devolution, bringing development back to speed, back to focus, back to freedom. I'm Nicky Pike. Okay, so everyone is talking about AI, but how many of us have truly embraced it? For many, skepticism about AI's capabilities run deep. It's shaped by doubts, industry experience, even the debates that we're hearing on LinkedIn and on Reddit. But what happens when you actually roll up your sleeves and you start using AI tools to help in a real-world setting? In this episode, we're joined by Keiran Sweet, line lead for the newly created Amdocs Cloud Studio group, who's going to share his personal journey from skepticism to belief in AI. We'll discuss how AI, once viewed with doubt, became a powerful partner in his workflow, particularly through the transformative role of coder. We'll also talk about how practical experience with AI tools changed his perspective and opened up new possibilities for innovation. Keiran, welcome to the Devolution.
Thank you for having me.
Anything you want to get kicked off before we jump into this?
Nothing in particular. I'm excited to be here. I really like the coder tool chain. It might be worth maybe talking a little bit about where I sit in all of this from a technology perspective and sort of who I work for and what we do, just so we can sort of frame where we're at on our journey in my particular small team in a larger unit. So My name is Keiran Sweet. I work for a section of Amdocs. Amdocs are the global leader, I guess, in telco software. And within Amdocs, we have Cloud Studio, which is the focus area for, cloud technologies, everything from modernization to migration, and obviously AI and data is a huge part of that unit. And my full title is Service Line Owner for Cloud Platforms. And what we do is we look for opportunities to build solutions in that space to solve particular problems, of which Coda, cloud development environments and tasks is one of our first offerings. Building that, we've had a lot of experience, not just with Coda, but with a lot of AI tools that, to be honest, in a lot of ways, Coda has opened our horizons to a variety of different tools and workflows. So yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that today. Our experience building with them and integrating them, I think, is probably the main thing that we'll be talking about.
All right. Well, first off, you started off with your role as service line leader. That's quite a mouthful. Is this kind of an Australian? Because you are coming from us from down under.
Yeah, I think I need to throw in my title into AI and get some shorter versions, to be honest. But yeah, it was something that sort of evolved over time. And I think that I do need to work on getting it shortened up in the coming weeks. So, but it isn't an Australian thing in particular. And yeah, probably worth calling out that, yeah, I'm based on the west coast of Australia, the side that everybody isn't. Sometimes they refer to where I live as the largest country town.
Largest country in town.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Gotcha. And how did you become a part of Amdocs? Because that's something that's very interesting to me, because Amdocs is primarily a telco company, but you guys are doing a lot of software development. How did you become a part of Amdocs, and what got you started down this route?
Yeah, so probably a little bit of background on myself. I like to say that I started as a Unix guy, then I became a Linux guy, then I became a cloud guy, and now I'm an AI guy. But I joined a relatively small consultancy in Australia probably 12 years ago, of which we then grew from an initial 10 people out to 300. Our focus was cloud and migration and modernization predominantly when cloud was in its infancy, and that was our specialization. About 4 years ago, Amdocs acquired the consultancy along with a number of other very similar companies. It was actually quite amazing how well they found some very similar companies to us culturally and technically, and they rolled us into their newly formed sort of cloud unit, of which I took a number of hats over the years, from being a consultant on the tools, customer sites, through to pre-sales to the role that I'm in now. The cloud unit has been growing, more acquisitions. They move people in and out based on what's going on, and I think the unit's over 700 people and growing now. So yeah, I'm a little fish in a big pond at times.
So you went from Mac to Linux to cloud. I think you're going to see a lot of people are going to resonate with that. I went from Windows to Mac to cloud. And then, we all end up in the same point. I think everybody at some point is going to be in the cloud, whether they want to be or not, in some kind of fashion.
Yeah, it's a crazy world. When I was prepping for this conversation, I was thinking about my professional journey. You know, I'm in my 40s now, and I've been working in IT for over 20 years. And I was thinking like the tools and the technology and the infrastructure and like available to the new generation or the current generation is just so immediate, when I used to just be collecting hardware in my parents' sort of garage and freaking them out about the power bill. So,
Well, at least
yeah.
you're not in the house now working with AI and having to worry about that power bill.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, but yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump right into this. So when we were talking in pre-show, you mentioned that you had this early skepticism around AI, especially after seeing so many miracle technologies come and go. What really shaped the skepticism for you?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to it. I think it's partly my vintage. As I mentioned, I've been around for a while. I've seen a lot of technology come and go. And I've also seen things need significant maturity before they're adopted. So, you know, a good example, I think, is Kubernetes. When Kubernetes first came out, I didn't doubt that it was an amazing piece of technology that would likely revolutionize everything. But those early builds that people were putting in their environments and like the apps weren't ready for them, things like that. I think that kind of early skepticism, where it's like this needs maturity, coming from me seeing some things like that occur over technology timelines, leads me down that path of early skepticism. Obviously, Kubernetes is the dominant player in container orchestration now, and I think it was always going to get there, but I think it was a lot of maturity and a lot of spaces needed to come first and foremost. And I think with AI, a lot of the early releases of a lot of these software tools and products and things like that, it was still shaping up. Like many other people, my first experience with some of these tools, and I was like, wow, this is amazing, and I can get it to do a whole bunch of things. But there was still a lot of aspects in these early tools where it was so confidently wrong. And so, like, a really good example is that, you know, with like IAM policy in AWS, you could get it to give you some really great IAM policies early on, but then you give it something a little bit tricky and it'll be like, do it this way. And you'd be like, that's not even valid.
Right.
So I think that it was those kind of early maturity trajectories that sort of influenced a bit of my skepticism. But I think the thing that probably changed it was then when we started seeing, obviously it matured and it has been maturing a lot. And I think it's that transition from like generative AI to agentic AI. When I first installed the Amazon Q CLI, I was using Q in the IDE, but then I installed the CLI and I was like, oh, it can run commands. It can read files. It can make a mistake and then it'll just go and check the help file until the help switches on a command and then adjust itself. And I'm watching it in real time and I was like, okay, like I get this now. I get where this is going. It was kind of almost like driving a manual car. You know, you're like, oh, I get it. And so I think that was the big aha moment, and it's changed a lot of my skepticism. And even some people that I work with, they're like, wow, you changed overnight. And I was a bit like, well, I still needed to tinker a bit with it, and it was uncertain. So that's how I got on that sort of trajectory.
Yeah, I feel the same way you do. I was an early skeptic, and I think, and you could tell me if you agree with this, my perceptions of AI were based around those early playing with it, right? Getting in there and kind of messing with it. And like you said, great statement, confidently wrong. And I would see these things and say, well, this is not what I was promised. And so I gave up on it. But it's changing so fast. We're seeing new models come out on almost a weekly basis. We're seeing updates. We're seeing this kind of war of worlds between the big players. And each one is trying to one up each other. And it has truly grown in just the last 6 months what it can do. So I imagine that you saw the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is so hard. It is so hard to keep up. And I think another aspect, I think for me personally, because I've had roles where I'm like obviously the customer rather than the consultant, you know, budget and keeping things on a straight and narrow for plans and things like that. I actually don't really get sold to very well. It's very difficult to sell something to me. And what I generally want to do if I'm interested in a particular technology or something that I need to solve a problem, like I need to try it out. And I think that one thing about these tools is that they are easy to be able to be tried out. And I think that's actually why I like Coda as well, is that I could just download it and try it out. What I didn't have to set up like 5 calls to like see a demo. I could just roll up my sleeves and get my hands dirty and take it for a spin and deploy it and integrate it and see how it works and how it performs.
Okay. Well, and we bring it up Coder. So when you started experimenting with Coder, what expectations did you have for the product? I mean, were you surprised by how it worked and what it was able to do? And how did that play into kind of your AI journey?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So the first sort of time that we looked at Coder as a product and as a tool was actually a couple of years ago. And the use case that we were using was predominantly that cloud development environment. Give me a fully integrated Visual Studio Code or Jupyter Notebook type experience that's pre-integrated. Let's get driving that time to value right down for developers and engineers. And that really got our interest, not because of AI and things like that, but because we'd worked with so many different companies as consultants where the onboarding time for an engineer or a developer to start working on something was measured at best in weeks, probably more normally in months. Get my laptop, crowdsource the documentation, figure out how to install the SAML Assume tool for Mac or Linux that you've been issued, get it working through the corporate proxy, all these kinds of things. And so like we saw this product and we looked at a few others and we were like, this one is pretty nice. It's almost like finally somebody took all of these moving parts and brought into a product that you could do a quality DevX and get going fast. And so I think from there, we started rolling in the AI agents as part of our, proof of concept work and into the templates. And we were like, oh, this is cool. This is speeding things up. And we're learning Copilot, we're learning Q. We're figuring out how to get them integrated in agentic mode to get them done, to get a better DevX and add more value. But I think the real sort of wow moment was when tasks came into the solution. Because if you step back and look at it, you'd be like, oh, the whole thing was right in front of, I guess, me the whole time, but even more so the Coder product team. Like obviously they had the vision, right? But it was like, oh, well, if we have a task that we want to perform, articulated in a ticket, and we have the ability to launch a developer environment, and we have the ability to put AI into the development environment, well, then why don't we just turn the user into an orchestrator of sorts?
Right.
And so that really resonated with us to say, well, this gives us the ability to re-envision our workflow and to use these AI agents more effectively and in parallel than having to be attached as a user to the Coder workspace and things like that. So I think that was one of the reasons why we really liked this product. Also, it was in a familiar sort of tool chain for us as infrastructure people, Terraform base, cloud native deployment model and things like that.
Was it that Coder task? Was it that feature that really made you think, man, we need to start dogfooding this? I can see great impact for our developers if we were able to incorporate this into their workflows?
Yeah, absolutely. With dogfooding it came from two particular approaches. One is that when you are building a solution that you're looking to position with your customers, you really need to stand behind it and be intimately familiar with it. So when you propose it to a customer, you need to say, this can really do this. I stand by it. So, we needed pen on our heart, honestly, put it into our own workflows and understand how it integrates, how it works, and also to know where the rough edges are and the sharp edges, because probably less in the Coder stack, but in the broad AI tooling stack that you integrate with it, they change so fast. Breaking changes are very real. And also, we build our solution in the same way that any other sort of product team works. We've got, sprints and epics, stories and tasks, and, we've got engineering components that we need to get through faster. So we're like, well, let's just bring our solution into our workflow, integrate it the way we work, which I think is pretty common, and get it to start accelerating our work as well. And that's what we've done.
Okay, so on the practical side of this, what were the specific problems that AI really helped you with? Was it really just kind of speeding up the developer productivity portion of it? Was it improving the experience? What were the problems that you were looking at when you started combining Coder and AI as a solution for your teams internally?
So I think if we went top down, probably the first thing that we used AI for is task hygiene first and foremost. So,
Okay.
we used to use Atlassian Intelligence a lot. That's a great product, but we were consolidating some tool chains. But we used, AI to really like refine our tickets and tasks and stories, and just really get the general hygiene of those things, definitions of done, nice and clean. And then from there, what we started doing was looking at the low-hanging fruit. What kinds of things do you think we can start offloading to AI and have high confidence that it's going to be able to do that? And so because we had refined the tickets to a point where they were pretty clean and consistent, like it helps AI a lot in understanding what it can do. And so in our current tool chain, sort of a mixture of, we have a tiny bit of CloudFormation, we have a lot of Terraform, we've got some Python code, we've got a whole bunch of various templates, stock images, and things like that. And so there's a lot of toil, updates and small features. And so what we wanted to do was to start seeing how much of the smaller things we can just get done that is like low effort. And so what we did was we implemented tasks into our workflow, and we started just feeding off the busy work into it. And so it's helped quite a lot in just those little pieces. The other one is just like things like documentation. Like, I think I'm probably the only person I know that's enthusiastic about technical documentation.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. And I think that the team that works with myself, they're not enthusiastic about documentation. And so what we did is like we consolidated a lot of our documentation into GitHub Wiki from Confluence, and so we use it to sort of help maintain that as well as part of our dev flows. So from there, we've started doing like a lot more advanced things, from breaking down applications and refactoring things and doing planning and well-architected reviews that are probably a little bit more complicated and integrated. And we're just pushing to see how long a task we can run before things start going a bit sideways.
Well, I've got to imagine. So you rolled this out. You are using AI development flows today. I got to imagine that some of your devs pushed back and said, no, especially when we're looking at all the debates out there about replacement and people worrying about their jobs. What did you see from your developer side when you started rolling out your process? Did they actually look at it? Did they come in and say, yeah, this is something that will actually help us? Or were they worried about it being a replacement for them?
I think I'm kind of fortunate in that the team that helps build this solution offering is pretty sort of open-minded and engaged. And I think that they're sort of broadly geeks. They like new technology. But I do have sort of one guy in my team who's similar sort of age to me and similar background, like Unix, Linux, and things like that. And I thought it'd be interesting to see how he goes with this project and learning these tools. I think he had a very similar trajectory for me as like, all right, this AI thing, whatever. And then, he had a similar moment where he took it for a spin. He saw it could run commands. He could see that he could offload a lot of things to it. And I'd say like pretty much everybody has sort of taken to it like a duck to water. And I'm kind of fortunate that I'm working in a small team in that regards. I think that some people came on a little bit later to that journey because they were working on like other parts of the solution. But I have been fortunate in that regards. But I do see a lot of skepticism still out there, and it isn't a silver bullet. But I think if you tune it and you get it into your workflow, so you give it the right kinds of work, then people will start seeing real impact right away.
Well, and when you're talking about skepticism, you've got those that are skeptical, you've got those that are believers in what it will do. But you also talked to me about this AI agnosticism, right? People that are not quite believers, but they're not deniers they're not deniers either. Are you seeing that has an impact? Are those people more likely to be a little bit more open to the process? Are they more likely to skew towards the skepticism part? What are you seeing about those people that aren't really one way or the other?
I think it's difficult for people in AI at the moment, just because it's such a broad topic. It can mean so many things to so many people. And I think that a lot of people sort of still think of AI as, ChatGPT, it's just this thing, and that's what AI is. And then the wider community, is like, no, it's this thing and it can do everything. And I think that it's really challenging, I think, for the normal person today to understand what this AI thing is, where it really is, and so forth. So I do think that it's slightly changing, but I think that people who really like have the aha moments is the people who have a problem that they need to solve and they hack on it to see how they can solve it with AI today, just through experimentation. One of the things that I think is really, really important about this AI stuff, and it's the same experience that I had with cloud in its infancy, in that there's so much going on that you kind of just need to box off a problem and pick a tool and experiment with it, but get proficient with like at least one tool, understand its boundaries, because they have common attributes in a lot of ways, like Q, Copilot, the Anthropic toolchain, things like that. They all sort of work in a common way, and they also have a bunch of different settings and things like that. And I think it's important to try and get proficient and experiment with one particular tool, and then it helps you understand the foundations, but also then evaluate other tools in a consistent way. And we saw this with cloud in that, like, first Amazon and 1 billion services getting released every day, and you're overwhelmed. And then Azure and GCP came out. I remember there was like a metric that between, at peak, Azure, GCP, and AWS were releasing something like 40 Kubernetes service updates a day. And people were trying to catch up. And I think it's that problem again with a lot of people, challenges with learning AI. And you sort of see that I talk about Q a lot because that's what we use, and capable and it's good and we like it. But I didn't want us to be pivoting between tools all the time because I feel like you just don't really learn anything. You learn just enough. So I think it's a tricky answer to the question. It's probably a long-winded answer to the question. But yeah, I think that people just need to find a problem, pick a tool, get proficient, and see where it leads them. It is maturing so fast.
And you guys, and you created, so based off of your experiences with AI, y'all created this product, which we're fixing to get into. And sneak peek for everybody, I've seen this before the show. It is absolutely cool. It's very beautiful. But you, again, going back to that confidently wrong that you talked about with AI, we still see that today. It's getting better. There's confidence ratings coming in with AI. It is getting better at providing correct answers. But when you're going and kind of basing a product and a platform around this, around AI and around Coder and the ability to use agentics, isolated, when AI makes those mistakes, are you using that as part of the learning process? Are those failures kind of helping you build trust and teach you guys and your team how to build this platform more effectively?
Yeah, absolutely. I think where we're at right now is we treat some of these AI tools like a really, really well-equipped, well-educated junior developer. I think that's kind of where the trust level is. And so, we're not at a point where we let it merge direct to master without a human to double check things. We still have steps in CI to check standards and things like that can't be bypassed. It still has to work in the way that we do, and it has to have all of the checks and balances. But I think if you look at, the way that we work in our dev flow, we've done a lot of configuration of specifically Amazon Q, but it's very repeatable for any kind of agent around configuring it so that it's aware of the way that we work, the code standards that we have, so that it's, doesn't just have a crack at things uneducated. And so probably the thing that we do that's probably made the most impact right away is that all of our approach to technology for the solution is defined in architecture decision records. Everything from how we approach Git commits, how we handle branching, AWS resource naming, Kubernetes approach, all the way through to documentation and design structure. And that's all written in like a standard ADR format for humans. But what we did is we converted all of those ways of working into Q rules, and it can be any kind of rule for any kind of AI. And we even define an ADR for how we want AI to talk to us and communicate to us when working on engineering tickets. Now, we store all of that in a Git repo with those standards. And so whenever we launch a task, we actually clone that repo and those rules into the workspace for the task, and we inject it into the queue configuration. So that effectively means that every AI tool knows how we want it to work. And then as we hit issues and like AI has not given us the outcome we want. Let's just work back with it and go like, how did it arrive at this? Is this a missing standard? Is this that we converted our ADRs incorrectly and there's something uncertain that AI's picked up here? And then we pull requests into the ADR repository, we re-encode any changes, and then the next set of tasks pick up those rules on the next one. So, there's a constant feedback loop. The other thing is around like prompts. Inside the task, we have the system prompt, and we also have the task prompt or the user prompt. And that system prompt has gone through a lot of iterations because our workflow has changed a lot and Q changes a lot. We can actually send tasks now to both Copilot and Q with just a change of a label on a task. So we need to figure out what the balance is for the tools. But yeah, there's like a constant feedback loop all of the time for us.
I think you guys were ahead of your time with what you're talking about. I think a lot of the deniers that we see with AI are coming from, I won't say a basic because we're still learning, but it is a refusal or an inability to kind of learn how to work with AI. We're seeing this in development today where, MD files that are basically product requirement docs are being set to how we're supposed to do development instead of going in and writing code. And a lot of the failures that I think we see today are coming from people that go in and they ask AI, create me a payment system. And then they're shocked that they get back garbage. It was garbage in, it was garbage out. Classic technology idiom there. But you guys are actually going in and you're creating architecture that gets hit every time. And you talked about the system prompt versus the user prompt. And I want to ask you a question on that because that is one of the things that I know Coder really paid attention to is the ability to standardize that system prompt across workspaces so that everybody's got a consistency there. Do you find that helps you to have that consistency when it comes to the system prompt as well as the documents that you put in Clone?
Yeah, massively. And what we found is that system prompt, so the way that we implement it is that, obviously task template pulls in all of infrastructure and the AI tooling and sets up all of the foundations for it to run. It does the authentication and a whole bunch of other things. So, and then effectively all we do is we expose the user prompt as a parameter to the task. But that system prompt is really critical for us because it sets up the persona for the AI. We tell it who and what it is, its role in the team, the tool chain that we're using, the expectations on outcome, and really standardize it there for the ways of working. And like we've gone through a lot of iterations on this, sometimes to work around bugs in the tooling. We found that in some versions of Q that it was doing everything and then not opening a pull request. And like the only way that we could at the end, like it did everything right and then just didn't finish the job. And so like we've gone through revisions where we've had to put really explicit things in the system prompt to work around those bugs. Like you absolutely must open the pull request at the end of your job period and things like that. But it really gives us that ability to standardize the prompts across every user of the system. And one of the things that we've really refined there is, initially our workflow was that we could take the contents of a Jira ticket or a project ticket, and we would just like take the whole body and just slam it straight into the user prompt, and then it would be concatenated with the system prompt, and it was a bit of a mess. And so what we did is we worked on it over time so that the system prompt is effectively like a way of working, and combined with the rules that we inject into it on launch. But then what we do now is that because we have MCPs for our various tools, all we do now is the user prompt is, please work on this ticket ID. It goes underneath, and then the agent and the MCP and the system prompt go, all right, I know what to do. Let me go and fetch enough information from that ticket ID. And it does the rest, and it's a lot cleaner. And we don't have to do a whole bunch of big concatenation of user prompts and system prompts and rules. It's a lot cleaner workflow. So yeah, it's pretty cool to have everybody working in the same consistent way, and a fix straight into the code base for the templates or the ADRs immediately applies to everybody working on the solution as well.
Now, are you splitting out the templates per persona? Are you using dynamic parameters where they can choose the persona for the task that they're going to be doing and pull in that? Because I have seen companies that go in and they do create a GitHub list of system prompts, and those get part of the template and they come in as part of the Terraform. And then whoever decides to pick the template and start the workspace, they choose basically which system prompt they're going to get, but they get that consistency. How are you guys doing that?
Yeah, we split. We had just sort of one template initially because we only were working on a certain set of tech and it was okay. And we also only had one agent, which was Amazon Q. We then got Copilot and we put that in the same template. And what we allowed you to do was to kind of pass through a separate parameter, or you can use like the presets and things like that to switch between them and pass the same task through. But what we found, as expected, was the template got out of control. So what we do is, we split out the templates in two ways. So is it like a CDE, like a cloud development environment type experience where people log in, they use it like a workspace and a development environment? We have a class of templates for that, which have all of those like common tools. They're effectively the same tools, but just we add a little bit more extra stuff in there for interactive use. And then we have like task-based templates. And then what we do for the task-based templates is we split them out by agents, and we also split them out by any kind of specialized skills. And then what we've done is we've actually built like CI pipelines for each of these. So we have a set of repos that contain all the templates. You can cut a branch of them. You can make a change to them, be it a system prompt or whatever. You push that, it will build the Docker image, because at the moment we're just using Kubernetes backed tasks. Just works for us. We don't really need any really hardcore infrastructure for the things that we're doing. That'll go through a build process. It'll build a Docker image. It'll tag it based on the branch, but it'll also push it to ECR, but also push a copy of the templates out to Coda that maps to that and puts a label on it, so that we can say, right, this is like a test branch, and we can route our tasks to a particular test branch. Be it we change the prompts, or we add some more tools, or we update a version, it lets us kind of test that quickly. And then we merge it to master, and then we'll merge it to main, and then it'll go through, build it, promote it, and so on and so forth. So that's how we structure it. It's very, very sort of common branch-based dev flow. But yeah, it gives us that ability to quickly test something and then sort of merge it in and release it. So yeah, it's pretty cool. We don't like doing manual things, which is good.
Well, that's the point. Automation, AI, bringing those together is going to help you get rid of some of those mundane things that people don't want to do. And I think you should set the stage for us. I'm excited for people to see this. I'm ready to see this thing. I've seen the product. It's great. Why don't you give us a little backstory on it, what the product name is, kind of what your intention is for it. And then once you get done, I'm going to ask you to put your money where your mouth is and give us a show.
So yeah, our solution, it actually started as like Amdocs Cloud Development Environments backed by Coda. And so, what we want to do is show how we can, deliver that cloud development environments experience, rapid provisioning, quick integration, and all that sort of great stuff. Show them how we can deliver this to customers in a clean reference architecture for the enterprise. And so it started there. We have that capability, but where it's really evolved to is what we call the Amdocs Agentic Task Platform. And at its core, what we've done is we've taken the Coda reference architecture for two key use cases, both CDE and tasks, and then we've combined it with our experience over the years with, best of breed, well-architected cloud infrastructure, understanding the enterprise and their concerns, and building a solution that allows you to rapidly drop it in, batteries included, with all of the things that we think will make using Coda and its capabilities effective and get the best experience. And so, our solution is something that we're taking to market to help our customers out there in getting the most from both their existing technology stacks, but also letting their people do the best work that they can do in the shortest, painless amount of time. So I think that's sort of the spiel as best as I can get it. And, we can deliver this on any sort of infrastructure, the big hyperscalers as well as hybrid environments. And so it's all fully automated, infrastructure as code. We've got built CI pipelines, as I mentioned, for a variety of other components of the solution as well. We wanted it to be fully automated. So I'm more than happy to sort of show you a little bit about how it works and how we use it today.
You've done a lot of peacocking. Runs on any platform, runs on any hyperscaler. It's going to make your life easier. I've seen it. I want to show everybody. They're excited to see it. Let's get to it. Bring it up. Show us what you got, Keiran.
So probably what I'd like to do is just frame how we've got this implemented at the moment. So right now, we have our solution deployed in our own AWS account, and we use, at the moment, we use GitHub for all of our dev tooling. We did use Jira and Confluence, and they're all good tools, but we consolidated recently onto this because, to be honest, one of the big things was that the MCP for GitHub was just so mature. And so very quickly, so we're like, all right, let's consolidate onto this tool chain. And this is a real demo. This is actually some tasks that I had assigned to myself. So these are real tickets that it's actually doing. And so what we've done, right, is our traditional workflow was just like anybody else, a set of tasks and stories. They get refined, they get marked ready for development. And then when people pick them up, they move them into the in progress human category. People work on them, update them, and then when they're done, move them to review and then move them to dump. And in a traditional workflow, individuals, they may use AI tooling on their local machines, or in our case, we use the cloud development environments in our coder environments to work on those tickets. And we felt like the tasks, it was awesome, but there's a better way to integrate this with our workflow. So what I'll do is I'm going to
So while you're doing that, I want to bring up the first question. So you talked about how you consolidated this on GitHub. Is GitHub required for this, for Amdocs Agentic, or can you plug in GitLab or other solutions as well?
Yeah, you can integrate it into any type of task tracker, as long as they have, a decent enough API and automation suite to hook into. And to be honest, I'd say most solutions have that. If not, they may even have MCPs already, or there's open source ones that you can sort of bundle together. We're pretty confident that we could build integrations for almost anything. Okay. And I think that's what we used to be really focused on back in the initial cloud days, is really just integration with these kinds of APIs and events and flows.
I think that's key, because a lot of the enterprises out there, their tool spectrums across, it covers the board. So, the ability to be pluggable, to not have that true opinion for a platform, I think is going to be cool, or going to be absolutely key for a lot of enterprises out there today. So I'm glad to hear you say that it is pluggable.
Yeah, and I'll show you a slide that I built after this about where I think this is going, and all of the different types of events and systems you can integrate into a workflow like this, because it is very flexible, the coded tasks capabilities.
Okay.
So what I've got here on the left is three, well-refined tickets. So they're all very different. So one's about fixing some E&I tagging on the solution. One's doing an audit for some hard-coded AWS values, such as account IDs. And then also we needed to add some encryption to an S3 bucket. And so what we do is now we can move our tickets into this new column that we've created called In Progress AI Agent. And so this allows us to start treating the agents like another team member or an extension of yourself. And so once that happens, we've got some automation behind the scenes that hooks onto some events. And if you look at these tickets, you'll see that some new labels have been put on there just to let us know that they've been actioned. And it's also told us here that some tasks and workspaces have been launched for these. If you go into just the workspaces view, you'll see that we have 3 workspaces and tasks that have been launched, one for each ticket. And so behind the scenes, what's going on is that infrastructure is being provisioned, the AI agent's being brought into a ready state with the infrastructure, all of the tools. We inject all of the settings from ADRs, we define the system prompt, the MCPs, and then from there, it has enough context to go and pick up each one of those items in individual tasks. And so this effectively lets us work on multiple tickets at once while we're doing other things. Obviously, I've sped this up a little bit and I've cut down sort of the tasks view, but you can go and check on those in real time, see where things are at, if they get blocked or stopped, and things you can provide additional input or guidance to them. But I think the key one for us is that once they've finished their work, they automatically move themselves into a review state. So we can kind of observe and see where they're going on. And, if we look at this particular ticket here, we can go down and see what was performed. And so in this one, it's opened a pull request for us. It's given us a summary. It's told us where the branch is, and we're ready to go and have a look at it. So, we click on this code, on this link. What we'll find is that the pull request is fully done. This is our standard pull request, so it's got it from the ADRs. It tells us all of the things that it's done. Obviously, we need to validate all of these things. Links us back to what it was related to. We look at the commits, they've been squashed, they're conventional, it's linked to the ticket the way we want it in our ADRs, and we can go and see the changes that it's done. And it's actually removed some of the checks because we had this excluded for a period of time for various reasons. So it's actually gone, hey, I need to remove these check exclusions and I need to update the code as well. And this means that CI passes, which is particularly important. A pretty good example of the kinds of just busy work we can just offload to it was a real ticket that got merged, but it can do like more complicated ones. Like one that was really a wow moment for me was that we gave it a task to add IAM boundaries to all of our code for the solution. So this was like 6 repos that needed to look at, and it needed to go through all the IAM policies, see if we already exposed this as a variable, and so on and so forth. Now, what was particularly powerful about it was that we didn't tell it the repos to work on. We just gave it enough guidance to say, this is how to find the repos. It did the analysis of all of the repos in the code base, which was probably 10 at the time, filtered them down to 4. And then in those 4, there were IAM resources in there. 3 of those repos needed to have a new Terraform variable added for passing through an IAM boundary, because there was no functionality there. So it did that, it standardized the variables, add the functionality for that, added all the unit tests. Looked great. The 4th repo was particularly unique in that we'd actually taken a public repository, like module, checked that it didn't have anything nasty in it, and we brought it into our code base to maintain. Because it was from the community, it actually already had some of this functionality in there, and it had its own variable naming that we weren't really using. Q then looked at it and said, hey, I've done all of this standard in line with your code base and your ADRs and your standards, but this one already had that. It then adjusted that one to be in line with the standards, brought it into a common way of working, documented it, updated all the unit tests, and it created a different pull request for that with different details and explained why it did it. That work, I would say, would, for somebody in the team, it'd take a couple of hours to get it all right, test it and things like that. This one took 15 minutes, and our effort was just checking the code, doing a deploy into dev, merging it, tagging it, releasing it. Like, that's a pretty complicated thing to explain to anybody, to be honest, and we just dragged it as a ticket. So yeah, pretty cool stuff.
Well, I've got a ton of questions. So first and foremost, we watched you. It was kind of a click ops. Drag the ticket over to where you want it to go. Is that where you're putting the human in the loop? Is right now the humans are deciding which needs to go and which requires human intervention versus, hey, we believe that this will go into something that AI can take care of? So that's my first question.
Yeah, at the moment, we're in the loop up to that level. And what we did was, a bunch of refinement happened to get to that point, both from an integration perspective and so on and so forth. We're actually doing 2 things at the moment. Is we've actually brought in another template that uses a different agent, in this case Copilot. It gives us the ability to put a label on each ticket to allow you to route it to specific agents for both. Maybe Copilot is better than Q for certain activities, so it lets us make a decision. Also lets us bake them off against each other. Copy a ticket, put one label on each one, and then just move them both to done and see the difference in the output, and let us do comparisons on effectiveness and things like that. So that's the first thing that we're kind of working on at the moment, front of mind. Okay. Now, we are chipping away now at how much more can we do? So one of the things that it does also do is we've got it hooked in so it can execute via MCP the CI pipelines. So we did find that in some of the early unit tests that it wrote, they were passing locally in the container, but not passing in CI. And so we extended the capabilities to say, look, we need you to be able to run CI and make sure that they pass there. And if they don't pass there, you need to fix it. So we're chipping away at it. I think the next thing that we're probably going to do is to start saying, all right, well, let's pick a couple of repos that we're confident in its ability to work on, and let's let them go through all of the gates and reduce the human in the loop and get them to tag, merge to master and then tag, and then we will handle the release. But we're still not right there, I think, at trusting it to do a full release. but I think that's on the trajectory for us going forward.
Well, and I think you guys built up some trust around what you've got in this system so that you're probably going to see more trust from you guys than what another enterprise might do. But you brought up the ability to tag to do multiple agents. I think that brings up some really interesting workflows to where, okay, you've got an enterprise that maybe is not ready to let AI go do code generation. We let the human go ahead and do that. But once they commit code, can it pick up and do documentation? Make sure the documentation is okay. Can it create unit tests based off the development that the developers put in? Those all seem like interesting use cases as well. Do you agree? Is that something y'all are looking at?
The thing we've done recently is we've moved from Confluence for our engineering, documentation to GitHub Wiki because one, it's just one less tool for us to handle. And also, to be honest, Atlassian MCP, it's still maturing in a lot of ways. So we were like, you know what, let's just consolidate it. So we're using, Wiki. One of the benefits of that is that GitHub can work with Wiki, its own wikis as well. And so we update the prompts and the various configurations and the ADRs rules that go into Q to say, oh, by the way, the documentation's here. Make sure you link it all together and you bring that into the pull request as well. So that's one thing that we do. I think one thing with these workflows is like less tools is better from an integration perspective if you can do it. Like every organization is different. They've got different systems and integrations, but I think the more standardization you can do, the easier it is for AI to work with it. From a unit testing perspective, absolutely as well. We did like out of the gates, standardized in a bunch of unit testing frameworks. Terraform has its own test framework and things like that. And I'd say unit testing is probably up there with my team's least favorite things to do with documentation. And so, yeah, it helps a lot with those types of test cases. I would caveat though that, you do need to keep an eye on those test cases because it's almost like in some ways checking your own homework. You really do need to pay attention that it hasn't confidently written a test that's wrong, or it's written some code and it's testing it as wrong as well. Right. So you do need to pay attention to it. And so, it sort of comes back to that, well-equipped junior view at times of it. So that's kind of where we're at with that. I did find that newer versions of the AI agents got more capable at writing unit tests. The first versions of a lot of these tools, including ChatGPT, when I was just getting it to render out some stuff and test it, they actually didn't even know that the Terraform test functionality existed. And it was like, hey, go and use this other community one. Gave me a whole bunch of Golang back. And I was like, that's not the tools we're using. So, yep. And so you can work around them by adjusting prompts and saying, be aware this exists and do it, or just wait for new versions and hope that it gets trained on the tools. So they're two big ones. We have some sort of fancier use cases like that we've been using as well more recently, like around doing well-architected reviews. So, that used to be something that would take days, maybe weeks, depending on the size of your code base. What we've got now is that we can, at the beginning of a sprint plan, we can actually just create a ticket that says, do a well-architected review on all of our code base. And we can say, focus on a particular pillar, be it security or performance or something like that, because the well-architected review framework is broad, it covers a lot of ground. And we can say, give us the top 10 things that you think we should do as a priority based on what you find in the code base. But now it can also, rather than just update a ticket, it can create those top 10 as tasks in our backlog and define them for us where it found issues. And then we can either, depending on your confidence, move those tickets into AI and get them to work on them right away, or we can refine them further and make a decision on if this goes to a human or if it goes to an agent.
So you're kind of blowing my mind. For every sentence you sing, I bring up more questions. I bring up more possibilities here. So I'm going to start with the first one, which is, you talked about that very complex case. You pulled in multiple repos. Are you seeing issues with this, with context windows and the ability to bring in the token counts that are necessary, especially when we look at a lot of enterprises out there still using mono repos, or they've got very big multiple repos. Are you seeing issues with that in your solution?
Yeah, we did. At the moment, I think we're looking pretty well defined for our repos and size. We have them broken out, which helps. But we were seeing a lot of issues with context, both in that if we go top down, we need to refine our prompts. That was one thing that we spent a bunch of time on, and the tools mature as well. So the prompts were being refined And then also we realized that like when we had our ADRs defined as well, we had like a one-to-one mapping for this ADR maps to this markdown file for the rules, but they got very big, so we start getting to like 12, 13, 14 different ADRs for different types of engineering standards that still map to a lot of Q rules. So what we did is we condensed those down into smaller aspects to reduce that context window down. The next thing that we did was MCPs helped a lot. So our first workflow from that example was that we would effectively just fetch the body of the ticket out and kind of concatenate it with the system prompt and a bunch of other resources and information that it needed. So what we did was we started condensing that down a lot to refine the tickets for AI if we thought it was going to go there. So it got less information, more specific. And then the other thing that we did was as we evolved, we realized, we shouldn't just be like grabbing a whole bunch of text and jamming it in. Let's just use the MCP to go and let it pull the information it needs and refine it. So a lot of those things helped us make it a lot more effective. The more information you can give it, like specifically for your tasks, the better up front. And if you can try and have it minimize the amount of like bulk reading large repos in, like that helps as well. Big mono repos, we're messing around with some stuff like on an old code base internally to see how that goes. It's kind of mixed at the moment, is my experience. The other thing that's interesting, especially with Q, and I think Copilot does it as well, is like we were finding that it was forgetting to do things. So they've put in optimizations inside of tools that are effectively to-do lists so that it actually just goes like, here's a bunch of stuff I've been done. I'm going to put them on the to-do list over here, and I'm going to do this thing, and then I'm going to come back to them. And so we're seeing the tools get smarter as well. The other thing Q has released, and I think Copilot has it as well, is this sub-agent functionality. So effectively, it's like threads. So you effectively break your Q configuration up into sub-prompts, and then you pass it to Q, and then it goes, okay, this piece of work should go for that thread, this one, and they've got their own variable context windows and area of focus, microservices and threads back again. That's all experimental. So we're kind of
well, that's the fun part of being into this is getting to play around with new stuff.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. So the big question is, so I can definitely see where the productivity gains are coming. I can see where developers would like this because it's taken some of the mundane off of them. But what about cost? I mean, you're running a lot of stuff through AI. Are you seeing that this is offset? Are you breaking even? Are you upside down when it comes to?
To be honest, we've been fortunate. We're a hyperscaler partner and we get access to a bunch of tools, but we do need to factor in the kinds of work that we're going to put on it and understand that we're going to get back what we want or we're just going to blow a bunch of tokens. One area of particular focus and interest that I've had front of mind in the enterprise especially is like, how do you observe the effectiveness and the cost on two sort of axes? So, and I think that that's an emerging space, is that I would like to sort of build into this a way to visualize how much this cost and was it any good? And I think that we probably have enough information inside of the solution to be able to start, we pump a lot of this data into Grafana and a bunch of other observability tools. But I think if we mine through it and expose a bit more, we should be able to understand like in more detail. But I don't think for the general day-to-day work, we could go back to an old way of working. I just don't think it's possible. But you do need to keep in mind the limits of each of these agents, their token costs or their capacity costs, or how many queries you're allowed to send through to it. And that comes in the whole context engineering and refinement space as well. So, yeah.
And I know that there's going to be people that are watching this that think, wow, that looks really great. That looks like it's something that would help us. But me being the skeptic that I am, the first question I was asked is, you talked about how you train this on your code. What does this look like as a product coming in fresh from an enterprise? Is there a lot of training? Is there a lot of upfront? Y'all been running this for a while, so you've tuned your AI to work for you. What does that process look like if this is a product coming into a new enterprise that you're helping deploy for?
Yeah, it's the way we bundled it is that if you wanted to do a proof of concept or if you wanted to bring this into your environment, there's a couple of phases. So first phase, we'd do some discovery, we'd understand your environment, your tool chain, the kinds of problems that you would like to solve. We could then come in, deploy the solution. We have it all automated. It's pretty standardized. We get it into your environment, and you can have it in a different couple of ways. We can drop it in as like a all-in-one solution, or we can take out some sections if you already have an opinion on how you want to do infrastructure in your environment. Mm-hmm. From there, what we would do is then we'd work with the team to understand all of the tools and the templates and integrations that we're going to need to put together for that particular task. And we also have all of the CI/CD pipelines and stuff like that we can bring to accelerate that. And we have a whole bunch of existing patterns from things that we've built and experimented on. And then we work with the team to sort of make a decision on AI. So depending on the types of tasks you want to do, like you may want to have a off-the-shelf thing from like Copilot, Q, Anthropic, whoever else is out at the moment, and we work to integrate that, ideally to get more out of their existing investments, to be honest. And then we go through our iteration and integration phase of, let's start putting it through its paces. Let's put it into the hands of developers, get success there, and then introduce additional use cases. And then obviously there's an operations aspect as well. So how do we make sure that this becomes broadly adopted, but it's set up for success in the future? So, what does operations look like? How do we integrate into observability tools, security tools, and things like that? So that's probably the trajectory for us. And then from a commercial side, it depends on the use cases and how complicated the integration is, but we have a structure around that as well. And we're a partner with Coda, so we can handle license resell and a bunch of stuff so that it's one interface to us to realize it. So yeah.
So no fluff, 3 words or less, typical type frame for integration. Are we talking 6 months? We talking a year? What are we talking?
I actually think that deploying the solution is very easy. And I think that integration, like I've said to a lot of people, integration is everything. When it comes to AI. AI, without its ability to take action and do things, has no purpose. And so I think getting our solution is very rapid because it's all codified. I think that like weeks with the right support and enablement inside an organization to get it in. Proof of concept, very, very, very rapid. But I think the tricky bit with AI now is like integrating it so that it can do more than just coding. You want it to talk to ServiceNow. You want it to go and talk to some bespoke legacy ticketing system, or you need it to check a change is in an approved state from something that's been around for a long time, or you want it to go and run a bunch of other pipelines for validation or call another system. I think that that's actually our bread and butter historically from a cloud engineering and integration perspective. I think that is where the bespoke work is today. And so MCP development and other things like that are things that we can help with as well. But yeah, that's the hard thing with it being integrators, is that every business is slightly different.
All right. Well, I think it's time for us to kind of start closing this up. So we end every 2 code session, and I really appreciate you giving us a demo of what the agentic platform's doing from Amdocs. You started out questioning whether AI could really make a meaningful impact. You found that it could. We got to see what you've created on this. How has this experience reshaped to you what it means to be a coder?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm an infrastructure guy by trade. I started in infrastructure. I'm a capable scripter. I always say to people, as a consultant, I've learned how to do conditionals in every language possible, but never really been a software engineer. And I think I understand how things work at that sort of integration level and the internet and computers. But I think now with these AI tools, it's given me the ability to, generate and prototype and develop everything from scripts and tools and projects much further than my foundational abilities have ever let me. Even just this week, I built some tools to back up Bucket, and that we were moving off a couple of gigs of data. And I was like, I could have written this and it would have taken me probably a few days. And it was done in an hour, So I think it really just elevates everybody's ability to do a lot more with their foundational skills and learn faster is probably how I would probably sum it up.
Augment and amplify. I think that's a story that a lot of people are trying to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I like it.
All right. And the last question, the hot seat question. What do you think about the next generation of developers? What skills or mindsets are these guys going to have that will define a great coder in the age of AI?
Another great question. I think the most important thing is to not defer understanding the foundations of technology is still very, very important. Even with cloud, with juniors, I said, like, don't just learn security groups, understand the protocols and the why. But I think that's really exciting. I was talking to some friends recently, is that they said, like, the new generation of developers and technologists aren't like, they don't carry a lot of that historical stuff that we've gone through. Like, they don't have to think about the world of pre-DevOps. Like,
they don't have the bag.
yeah, like they don't have the baggage. And I still think it's important to not just defer your job to AI, but to really learn. But I also are lucky that the new generation doesn't have to go through maybe that struggle that we all did of siloed infrastructure teams and so forth, and racking and stacking servers. So they're not shackled by some of these boundaries of the past. And I think it's pretty amazing, exciting time on what the next generation can do.
Excellent. Well, I think that's going to be a wrap. I'm going to say, again, thank you for joining us on the show today. Thank you for demoing the Amdocs Agentic AI platform. I think a lot of people are going to be interested in this. It really shows the art of the possible. And Keiran, what can we say? Can we consider you a full-fledged member of the Devolution?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It was great.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And till next time. Thank you for listening to Devolution. If you've got something for us to decode, let me know. You can message me, Nicky Pike, on LinkedIn, or join our Discord community and drop it there. And seriously, don't forget to subscribe. You do not want to miss what's next.